in order to make sure we all speak the same language and we have the same semantic around what we talk about. The fields of application and prerequisite, basically where can we apply risk management and enterprise risk management, and what are the mandatory contexts that we need or tools that we need to do that. What is a risk management cycle? Then the two suggested approach to managing risk enterprise-wide, and of course there's many things in between those two big buckets, but that kind of gives you an idea of how it could be done. How to design an enterprise risk management program with the instruments, meaning the tools in our toolbox and the training piece of it. And how can we implement an enterprise risk management program with a piece that's for me hugely important, the governance structure, and how to implement the risk management cycle and the references. So I'm going to pause here and ask you guys, do you have any comments, suggestions, ideas on the agenda for this business case, or the plan for this business case? And also what I will do is that I will send you guys the Word template in case you would want to tweak some language, or of course I did my check in terms of wording and spelling and stuff like that, but if there's something to be said more idiomatically or more meaningfully for everybody. So any question, ideas, comment on that suggested plan?
I think it looks great. So we're planning on one big business case in our.
Yeah, I've detailed all those sections right after, and I'm going to run you through, guys, through this. But in terms of plan and let's say chapters or sections, as you want to call them, is there any big element that you believe I would have left out or forgotten, or?
Looks good.
Okay. So now going into the weeds, chapter by chapter. So the purpose: to have a structured and consistent approach to enterprise, and I've put it in between parentheses because that works for enterprise risk management, it works for risk management as a whole, across an organization's operational, tactic, and strategic levels. The purpose is for enterprise risk management to provide a reasonable assurance that the second line of defense is an effective control to increase the likelihood to achieve objectives and deliver on the mission. Any comment, ideas? I take critics also.
My thought is that just from experience, it is very tight. I think the first one is really excellent. The second one may be a little bit. It's a little bit complex. I think it may be a little bit demanding on the person who's reading it. So somebody, so maybe to make it a little bit more accessible, you know, so people who are not very, for example, I think it's a little bit demanding on the reader in terms of what they need to know and understand and stuff like that. So it was maybe a possibility to either split it up into two statements that are a little bit more simple, or just say it in a way that's a little bit easier to access for people. Because as we've seen, as risk is, you know, because this is also not a very large group, it may not be
understood. Understood, Cello. So if I'm saying provide enterprise risk management methodologies.
Yeah, that's
yes.
good. That's good.
This is excellent.
As an effective control to increase the likelihood to achieve objective and deliver on the mission. Does it help?
It could even, well,
excellent.
maybe it's covered by methodologies, but it's methodology and a business process to.
Yeah, you know, we can. This is yeah. This is really easier, I think, for people to understand. It's more practical. I found that sort of language that's a little bit more academic is just not as effective. I think
that's absolutely fine with me. And really, again, I'm going to send a Word version. I mean, as you know, guys, I'm not American, so there's some, I would say, some way of expressing things that my culture is always bringing back to me. So please make it as simple or worded as it should be done in the United States. I'm absolutely fine with that. And don't take me wrong, I don't take it as an offense, on the contrary. So please, anytime. Okay.
Elaine, this is risk management, but did you want to say that it also provides a framework that applies to, you know, asset, project, you know, other risks risks as well?
Yeah, that's what actually was intended when I put enterprise in between parentheses, because it's risk management, and when I put operational, tactic, and strategic level, it means basically all and the above that you've described.
Yeah.
Ellen, I think that your statements are very accurate. So maybe instead of trying to wordsmith or make suggestions now,
yeah,
it's for me, for example, I would have to like really think and you know, and try to maybe, and people help me often with this, put it in a way so it's a little bit easier for people to understand, especially if in most, you know, your organizations, risk is associated with, you know, somebody who deals with insurance. You know, we need to kind of bring them along a little bit.
Would you have this chart above? Because again, that's the purpose. So the purpose should be kind of like straightforward and streamlined and simple and straight to the point. But
sorry, yeah, I think it's really an excellent idea to go through this, and you can explain what's meant. My own limitation is, and maybe others are, you know, more capable in this area. If I would have to, you know, spend time kind of one-on-one with the document and think about it, and it looks really good, and the main intention would be to try to, at least for me, to see how to kind of, you know, make it a little bit more accessible.
So Cello, you're basically saying have Elaine go through. If there's major comments, people make them, but then circulate it and people can give
yes.
that way.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. So for the definition, risk and opportunity. So here it's really a standard definition of risk and opportunity, either from the ISO 31000, either from the causal control framework, either from the APRM, which is the Association of Professionals for Risk Management. So a risk or an opportunity is an uncertain event. Should it occur, would have an impact on the objective. And I have underlined the key words in that. I have been more specific by laying out that an uncertain event that triggers a negative impact is a risk on the objective, is a risk, and the flip side of the coin, which is the opportunity for positive impact. And I've added a kind of note saying that for sake of conciseness, we will use in this document the term risk to avoid repeating risk and opportunity, which is kind of long.
Okay.
All right. Risk management definition. Here I have really stick to what the ISO 31000 states, which is the guiding principle for risk management and enterprise risk management. So risk management refers to a coordinated set of activities. So this is the framework, the methodology, therefore the methodology and the process Scott was referring to, that is used to direct an organization and to control the many risks that can affect its ability to achieve objectives. The term risk management also refers to the program that is used to manage risk. This program includes risk management principles, a risk management framework, and a risk management process. So all this is aligned with what we have in terms of purpose. Enterprise risk management definition. So we had risk management definition, now we elevate it to the enterprise risk management definition. And this is extracted from the Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Tradeway Commission, which we call the COSO, which I refer to very often as the COSO controls framework. And why controls framework? Because COSO is, I would say, the continuity of the ISO 31000, while it addresses more specifically the controls, meaning the mitigation piece, if you will, of the risk management. And COSO is a reference guide and actually a standard for internal audits. Enterprise risk management is a process effected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel applied in strategy setting and across the enterprise. It is designed to identify potential events that may affect the entity and manage risk to be within its risk appetite to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of entity objectives. Okay, and this piece of reasonable assurance is really key when you have the listed corporations that are providing their annual or even quarterly report either to the SEC or to other regulatory bodies, including to their shareholders. They are always saying they have a reasonable assurance, and the external auditors, when they are reviewing the company's financial statements, and after review, when they see no major issues in their letter or memorandum, typically speaking, they refer to this reasonable assurance that the company is under control. So I think so it means we have no 100% warranty or warranty, but we have the reasonable assurance that. Okay, any question or comments or ideas? No?
Not for me, no.
Okay. So the field of application. So here we really state that risk management can be implemented for any activity and in every segment of the organization, which ties back to what Scott was mentioning a moment ago. So risk management is a support to the decision-making process. That's very important. And here I've stated some examples of activities and segment of the organization where it could be or where it might be implemented in a plant, at the section level, at the division level, at the department level, or at business level, and can be implemented in engineering, in asset management, etc., etc. So I've given several examples of what it means to be implemented in any activity or every segment of the organization. And I further explained that the aggregation and the consolidation of the top risk identified across what we said above, and the escalation mechanism from the operational line to the tactic layer, and those are the first line of defense, and then to the strategic level are building the enterprise risk portfolio, meaning that you take all the top risk of all the level from the bottom-up approach, and all the top risk consolidated and aggregated and assessed gives you basically your enterprise risk portfolio. The prerequisite, and this piece is absolutely key, we need to have the support and the sponsorship of the head of the activity, the head of the organization, the head of the department, the head of the project, you name it. Depending on the group you're doing risk management for, we need to have the support and the sponsorship of this person. If this person is resistant to risk management, that's going to go nowhere. So yeah. And for me, that's the step really number one. The risk management cycle. And this is true for risk management at large, meaning including enterprise risk management, of course. There's one cycle. Disregarding if you do it for a project, for a division such as asset management, for departments such as engineering, for you name it, for enterprise. And it's an iterative process, meaning it's not a one shot type of thing and then we forget about it. It has to be a regular process. Question, comments, ideas? Okay. So here I'm talking about the two approaches for risk management: strategic, operational, tactic. So here, on purpose, I have not defined what operational means because it depends on the size of your organization. It depends on the mission vision of your organization, meaning of your strategic plan, if any, and it depends on what type of governance you have. Is it a very centralized governance where the CEO basically decides for everything and anything, or is it a more delegated matrix organization? That depends. So for us, as you've seen in my previous presentations on WSSC Water, for us operational is everything that is below asset management. So all the sections on asset management is the plants, is the project, is for example hydraulic section in engineering, piping section in engineering, is etc., etc. The tactic level is the level of the department director, meaning the chief procurement officer, the chief engineer officer, etc., etc. And the strategic level is the layer above, which is the GM and the CEO. In your organization, the definition of operational, tactic, and strategic might be different. So that's why I didn't put on purpose anything, so everybody can kind of layer their operational, tactic, and strategic level as it fits for their organization.
This is Cello. I have just a comment I'm concerned about, because the way we've defined in UAIM, the way we've defined operational, tactical, and strategic is based on a time constant, meaning when does it happen? What's the window, the time window? So operational was defined something that is in real time. Tactical, something that is, so it was not defined as within an organizational structure, but more in terms of processes, whether they happen in real time, which is like, you know, controlling a pump, or whether it's tactical in terms of, you know, hours, days, or months, you know, something like maintenance and laboratory, and strategic that has a longer term time constant, such as a planning, managing rates, and so forth. So I'm wondering if we can reconcile the, you know, these are, whether there's a danger to use two different ways to define the operational, tactical, and strategic. Is there a way to kind of?
Well, the split here between operational, tactic, and strategic is, for a risk management perspective, is not time bound. It depends on the relative importance of those elements to achieve the mission and the vision, because risk management is about, as you know, the objective and potential impact on the objective. So operational, yeah, typically speaking, operational are the really the that would be, for example, the maintenance or meter reading repairs, or would be would be, for example, small vendors purchases or stuff like that. Tactic is more is more again at the department level, which is the intermediate layer. So a bit more strategic, a bit more high level, a bit more consolidated, and actually the operational layer reports to the tactic layer in practical terms. So yeah, for risk management, it's not time bound.
Maybe the solution, Elaine, would just be almost in the narrative, just in a parenthetical comment that say these are terms that are also used, you know, in the business process framework with you know, some different meanings to them or something. I mean, you could do a table that displays it, but you know, maybe just some reference, because it could get confusing relative to the other activities we're doing.
So let me ask Cello and Scott. I remember the strategic, tactic, and operational, you know, the little matrices where we were putting where the challenges fit.
Yes.
Can you remind me again, because I think I don't remember it being much different from what Elaine is saying. The only difference really is if this is an organizational reporting structure, which I don't even think for risk it has to be.
No, yeah, it's not. Yeah, you're correct, Cassie. It's not directly a reporting structure. It's it's really, and here I've given some examples of what it means. Operational line would be, for example, the plants, the warehouse, the project, the sections, and the divisions, meaning the people who are operationally doing things in our organization every day. The tactic level would be more their boss, but not because it's their hierarchy, because the boss is overseeing all those activities under him. So that would be the tactic level. And here I've given also some examples. Again,
so, I guess what I'm wondering, I don't know if Scott or Cello has it handy, what are the definitions from the other definitions?
The definition from UAIM in that matrix and that we've had is based on looking at processes, meaning that operational level is, like I said, it's the time constant. When does this happen? How does it happen? So the operational has been, the way we've used that term was the real time. Anything that happens real time. And it doesn't matter whether it's a, if somebody's opening a valve, that's operational. If somebody is maintaining a valve that's on a schedule that's weekly or monthly or things like that, or that it's event-based, and then it is really tactical, and then strategic is long-term and looking into the future, such as planning. So on each level, there's a different kind of, data. On operational level, it's mostly time series. On tactical level, it would be transactional and events. And on the strategic, it's, really the long-term stuff. That's how we used it. It doesn't, and it's possible that the terms used within the area of risk are different, because in a it's not as much based on organization. So for the example that Alain was giving, if there's a supervisor, or let's say a boss, a team manager in a control, people who and operators report to him, then if he is doing planning for the operations, that would be on the tactical level. But the actual processes of monitoring and controlling the system would be on the operational level.
Okay. So here the strategic, tactic, and operational actually are not only used for the purpose of risk management in that sphere, but also for the company's structure, for the entity structure. Example, the Department of Hydraulics or Division of Hydraulics or Section of Hydraulics, for example.
Good, just 1 minute.
Which would be typically on an operational level at an organization viewpoint. So would be a project if you need to build a piping structure. And all those, I would say, activities somehow will be at the operational level. That's the day-to-day business, operational business, okay, without which the company could not basically exist or could not function or could not operate, right? The tactic level is more around, if I take an organization example, the business unit. You have a corporation that has business unit all over the world. So one business unit encompassing several type of activities, maybe engineering, construction, commissioning, installation, procurement, you name it, would be the tactic level because it's overseeing all those activities in one given area. So coming back to water utility, on my example, it would be engineering, and under engineering you have mechanics, hydraulics, piping, and you name it. Okay, so that's the kind of structure that doesn't.
So Kathleen, I don't think there's an argument with what this represents. I think it's more just how do we reconcile it with the work process, almost the value model, and where these things appear also. And so maybe it's just a clarifying statement that is made, you know, because I don't think that there's disagreement about what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's just more clarifying relative to the other context that's also being used. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. So here I have for the different pieces given some example of what it could mean. But again, depending on the organization, maybe some organization, water utility who have only one plant, they would see it at the tactic level or at the strategic level even. So that's just an example. So operational line would be the plants in my examples of warehouse, project sections, and divisions. The tactic level, and I've given an example, would be or could be the departments. And so basically here I explain how this is rolled up from bottom to top. And I do the other way around from the top to bottom. How the top-down approach, how basically do you do that? Where basically the risk management is done at the tactic and or strategic level, and then it is cascaded down to the operational level. Any question? No? Okay. So now to go more into the weeds and in practice, how do we do enterprise risk management? So first and foremost, we have to create some tools or to use some tools. And what are those tools? The risk matrix, we have it. The risk threshold, we have them. The risk universe, that's the category. I put it's also called the risk breakdown structure, which is another kind of name for that. And we call it RBS. That categorize the nature of the risk. Is your risk financial, etc., etc. We have that. And the risk register template, we also have it. That's why I put C appendix. Okay. Then we need to train people to bring awareness, culture, education on what risk management. If we, of course, want our stakeholder to be engaged in this process. So basically, a few things here, having a slide deck, of course, with the main principle, and also engaging them in putting in practice right away what they learn by going through the different risk management cycle phase and taking an example coming from them. And of course, you want to tailor your risk management program to your audience. Your risk management training slide deck will not be the same if you train your CEO or if you train your colleague on a plant, at a plant. Okay. So now in terms of the risk management program, the governance structure. So I think it's very important from the start of the program to lay down clear roles and responsibility. Who is doing what? A RACI matrix, if you will. And to be super clear on and crystal clear on where lies the ownership and the responsibilities. So here I've laid down what an enterprise risk manager or chief risk officer, that's the same word. And by the way, I hate the term enterprise risk manager. Why? Because an enterprise risk manager does not manage the risk, the business does. So I hate this terminology manager. That's why most of the corporations who are very well versed in terms of risk management call their risk people in general officers and not managers for that very exact reason. That's only my.
So Elaine,
Yeah.
you know, I was gonna just raise this question on maybe it's just a, you know, here's an example of a governance structure and roles and responsibilities, but that individual organizations may, you know, have different ones or something, because not everybody's going to do this. Most don't have a risk manager or risk officer. It's not saying that it wouldn't be a good idea, but and I like it there as kind of an aspirational kind of goal, but maybe it's just you know, these are typical roles and responsibilities or something like that. And then on governance, like it did say governance board, but the word board kind of could mean the board of directors for the agency, you know, those kind of, it's semantics really. But over on the left column on roles and responsibilities, you know, that could vary from organization to organization is my point.
No, it does. It does. And not everybody may have an enterprise risk manager or chief risk officer. So if they do not, right? And that's here. So maybe you want to word it differently, but here in terms of risk manager, risk officer, I've put that risk manager function or roles in a department, in a business unit, or in a department or division. Because maybe in some organization, and again, we may want to word it differently, but in some organization, there's not one person that has this kind of title, if you will. But there's, for example, the GCO, General Counsel's Office, or the General Counsel, who is also having a hat of risk manager, you know, so that might be a role and not a job description, if you will. So right. Maybe we want to word that differently. However, we have to be just a little bit careful with that. On the project, it works fine. For example, the project controls manager can be also the risk manager, because of course most of the risk fall under the financial piece, schedule piece, quality piece, contractual piece. Okay, and typically, or not typically, but project controls manager is overseeing all those kind of activities. But the risk officer or enterprise risk manager or chief risk officer, however you want to call individuals who have this risk role, have to be independent and transparent. And to have this independency, which is key in terms of risk management, basically you should not have a conflict of agenda. Meaning that if you are the risk manager and you're in engineering, you may have some comments that this risk or this opportunity is biased and full of subjectivity because you have your other hat of engineer, you know. So that's why this piece of transparency and independency in risk management, but that's true also for safety or for compliance, is of ultimate importance. So, I mean, point taken, Scott, and I will leave you maybe to suggest some wording around this if you believe.
Sure. And Kathleen has her hand up too,
Sure.
so maybe she wants to comment.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So this is excellent clarification that the enterprise risk manager does not manage the risks. Somebody else is managing the risk.
Yeah.
I think that would be worth clarifying in the text. I don't know what you think about maybe even not even using enterprise risk manager. Just call it the chief risk officer and then explain why. And then when you go to on the project level or operational level, this is really just a question, a clarification. So that is no longer an independent person, right? I mean, typically your project manager is the one who's managing all of the risks.
The project manager, okay, the project manager basically will make sure the mitigation strategies are implemented, okay? And the project manager will be basically the risk owner for his project. If you have a project risk manager on board, the project manager and this risk officer will be talking very often, and there would be a full alignment in between the two. So it doesn't mean that the risk officer will agree with the project manager. On the contrary, he or she will challenge the project manager, for example, if the project manager does not recognize some risks for whatever reason. And then the risk officer, in this case, if there's a misalignment, will escalate that. But there will be a close work between the risk officer and the project manager. But ultimately, the project manager is responsible for managing the risk on his project.
So another way to express it might be that the risk officer is a central point of accountability usually from an enterprise-wide standpoint, you know, and responsible for the system. And it's not all the decision making, but it's to facilitate the development of a risk management process and plan, and to maybe even monitoring roles. Yep. And that kind of thing, yep. Of that circle that you had, up above. And you have that. In some organizations, they would say, well, we're divided into 5 divisions. Everyone's going to, the division director is going to be responsible for, that process or something. I'm not arguing for it. I'm just saying that the way it often occurs. But I think that what you do, Kathleen, is you are a central point of accountability for the system and the process that is followed.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway,
I think we have. I mean, the whole. The word you used, Scott, was aspirational. I think, yeah. In terms of enterprise risk management, and right. I shared a little bit with you guys 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Of we've got lots of tentacles. Maybe you would think about it, and we don't have enterprise risk manager, or we don't have a chief risk officer. Excuse me. See, I just already said it wrong. That's neither here nor there, because I think this is written well. It's just that that just struck me right now that the enterprise risk manager is a misnomer. I think that's an important point that
Kathleen, maybe we could even just say that this is, for some, this would be an aspirational type of framework, and other ones will exist that incorporate different roles and roles and responsibilities differently.
Yeah,
But
I think it's fine. Let me can you scroll down, Elaine, and see after your chief risk officer, do you have, what's the other roles you have? The risk manager, risk officer. So are these?
So that is, for example, when you don't have a chief risk officer, but you have a role or a function of a project risk manager, or for example, if you're in engineering and you have a risk manager in your engineering department. And so this is more operational in terms of risk. The risk officer is more operational, is dealing, typically speaking, with the project, with engineering, with procurement, with,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, no, this document is really well put together. I thought it was good. I just, that one point I completely missed, and I think it's an important point.
So of course here the same applies, typically speaking, and as per the books, somebody who is in charge as a role or a function about risk is a risk officer, because really, bottom line, the accountability is to make sure they engage with the stakeholder, they gather the risk, so they cannot, I would say, they cannot create risk, and they are only sharing the information that's given to them. So if you are in a corporation or in an entity where people are really resistant to risk for whatever reason, and they do not share risk, the risk officer will not report anything. And it has happened to me only once in my career, where I had this fact, and one group, let's say, didn't want to share their risk. And when I made my report to the CEO, he said, well, here, there's nothing. I said, yeah, there's nothing, because nobody tells me anything, so I cannot report anything. and yeah, period. And that's it. And
the risk is nobody's telling you anything.
Exactly. So you always have this that can happen in corporation, but that was this group of people did it only once. Huh? That was the last time. Huh? After that, they were talking to me. So
how closely does this follow COSO? Because if it does, then it could reference that and say there could be other, applications, but that's what's represented here. And maybe that's in the transmittal of it or something, but rather than buried in it. But if that's the case, Elaine, then maybe that's another way to, better than saying aspirational.
But Scott, this is according to the ISO 31000. That's not what Ellen does at WSSC Water or what Ellen did before.
Okay.
It occurs that what Ellen did before, what Ellen does now, is according to the ISO 31000.
Okay, well, you could, I'm just wondering if referring back to that, in terms of the framework, might make sense.
Okay, okay, and that's fine. I have put at the end of my documents the references where all this comes from.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you want to have those references somewhere else, that's also absolutely fine. I'm just drafting this to get some feedback on what it makes more sense for all of you. So in terms of roles and responsibilities, the other piece is the business owners, and those stakeholders are really the key in the risk management process, because obviously not only are they the ones who are going to identify the risk, and typically speaking, the risk officer or the chief risk officer is playing the devil's advocate, is asking provocative questions, is challenging nicely his audience in order to extract from their brain the risks, the opportunities, and how to mitigate them. But the business owners at the end of the day are going to be the ones to implement whatever plan, and I call those plans mini projects, to address those risks. And they are accountable. They are responsible for doing that. Then frequency of risk workshop. So of course here it's a general framework. Example monthly for projects. I mean, if you are on a very dynamic project and let's say a 6 months project that is costing 500 million US dollars, you would want to monitor it more than monthly, right? Of course. Everything needs to be proportionate, and I think that's the the key here. Everything needs to be proportionate to your objective and also to the magnitude of what you're looking at. And what is key, of course, here is a cross-functional engagement. No risk officer can do risk management on his own or on her own in her office talking to nobody. I mean, that cannot happen. That just cannot happen.
Hi, Eileen.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Chris from Metrovan. I think this is a good document to go through. Thanks for putting this together. Just wondering, you know, I missed a couple risk meeting in a month or two. But anyhow, so is the business diagram identifying these roles as a separate stream so that we have a clear understanding? Like Metro Vancouver doesn't have these roles in a work structure or like clearly defined way anyway. It will be something very powerful to have some sort of a diagram that connects the roles of these different roles and then those three levels of risk, operation, tactic, and strategic. So I was just wondering if that business process diagram sort of does that role.
Yeah, and actually, good morning first, Chris. I am full screen, so I don't see who has his hand up and who is here or not. So good morning. What we've been working on with John and Michael is to have actually 3 business process diagrams. One for enterprise risk, one for an activity, well, what we call an activity. We are going to take the example of asset management, and a third one, which is for project risk. So John and Michael have been working on those. I have commented back right before this meeting. So next meeting we have, we will go through them to finalize them. Actually, the enterprise risk one had been finalized, not the last meeting, the one before last, I believe. So yes, they do exist, to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Jody Caldwell joined the call as well.
Oh, good morning, Jody.
Or maybe he's just listening in and he's multitasking. I don't know, but he had a conflict earlier, but I see him that he joined.
Yeah. Okay, so also I suggested here a kind of magnitude of group of people, because when you have 15 people in the room, experience shows that only 3, 4, 5 people speak and the rest does not. So you really want to make sure that you have a manageable group and that the people around the table are people either subject matter experts, I'm sorry, or you have actually people who are deeply involved, knowledgeable, or influenced or impacted by the risk you're going to talk about. Implementing the risk management cycles. So here I've gone phase by phase, meaning going into the weeds of this, okay?
Yep.
So here, identification, and I have put the bow tie, which is one of the approaches which further help of having a structured approach to describing your risk, which is going to be very useful after that. I've detailed what it means. Nominate a risk owner, it's critical. Each risk have to have only one risk owner, because if you have several, this diluting the ownership, so you want to have one interlocutor. And the risk owner is really going to be in charge of making sure this risk is mitigated, monitored, and reviewed on a regular basis. So I'm not going to read every line, but that's basically what it says here. Here also I have put a little note saying not exhaustive source of identification. Where do you identify your risk from? Of course, from your experience, internal, external sources, quantitative data, or a combination of that. Typical sources could be also the participant experience, some reports, some check sheets, some professional organization, magazines, website, and you name it, okay? For the assessment, so here I have laid down the fact that there's two types of assessment, but for the purpose of that document, we are going to talk only about the qualitative assessment. And why? Because if you have your risk management culture established, if you have your risk tool established, if you have your processes established, if you have already implemented it for a couple of years, then you can start thinking about the quantitative risk assessment. You don't want to bring this first, otherwise you are going to scare people and nobody's going to want to embrace risk management as a process and a culture. So, yeah.
Elaine, yeah. I know that we're getting
away.
a little short on time, but yeah. One thing that you've talked about in the past that I don't see reflected here, I don't think, was risk appetite. And, almost what are you trying to reduce your level of risk to? And I'm just wondering if maybe it's just putting those words in a place where you're, where it fits, but that maybe it's a definition or, or something. I don't know.
No, well, yeah, I've thought about that. And again, risk appetite is when you have a company that is mature, meaning that when you have already an enterprise risk management program, because a risk appetite is defined and made by the CEO and the top leadership team. So for that matter, it's more of a long-term type of thing. I've put it in the business process diagram because it should be logically the first thing that that is defined, which in reality, for that matter, doesn't happen. So I didn't want to be too aspirational on that matter because yes, agree with you 100%. That should be the first thing that is done in reality, besides the bank and the financial institution, because they have to by regulation. I've never seen it done at first. So again, I think what's important is to do risk management in a company. And once a company is actually doing risk management, is actually managing its risks, then you can kind of build that. Because what is the risk appetite? The risk appetite or the risk tolerance for a company is only setting at the company's level what risk they do not want to take. And it falls into like 4, 5, 6, maybe big buckets, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe it's just part of training up above, or that first workshop, one of the two, where you just introduce the concept. But I think when you're talking about managing asset risk, that there are a lot of organizations that have, in effect, established what a risk appetite is. So,
yeah.
But anyway, that's just wanted to raise it.
Yeah, I have, yeah. Somebody wants to say something? No?
Well, because I think Jody and maybe others would want to comment, but Jody may not be able to participate. Maybe he's just listening in.
Yeah. I have provided, I believe it was after last session, an example of what risk appetite looks like. And we are using the term risk appetite really for an enterprise at a company level.
Yeah.
If we are talking about a project as, if you will, its appetite and its tolerance, but it's the project objectives, meaning that you have a budget, you have a schedule, you have a quality, and you have a contract, right? So the boundaries of your tolerance are inside the budget, the contract, the schedule, and everything. So the appetite for a project are pretty easy. For asset management, the risk appetite is really for utility, from what I can see, dictated by your capital improvement project or your CIP and by your operational budget. That's your appetite. You cannot spend more than what you have, and you cannot spend more than what has been voted. At the enterprise level, it's really a roll-up of all this. For example, if a company was to say at an enterprise level, my tolerance is 50 miles of pipe, or let's say 50 main breaks a year. I'm picking any kind of example, right?
Right.
So it means that you will build all your CIP and your operational budget in order to make sure that this tolerance to risk, this maximum tolerance to risk, is not gone over. And and again, that would be only one. You want to monitor, I guess, your debt ratio. You want to monitor your turnover. You want to monitor a lot of things. Okay, it's 11:29, so I'm afraid I will have to stop here for today. Maybe what I would like, and I know you guys, you're also kind of short in time, but I would like to send you this Word document, and maybe Cello could put it in the OneDrive or wherever that is, and we could collaborate on this document, meaning that all of you could put in the same document all your comments, ideas, rewording suggestions, edits, or you name it, and we could maybe go through all of your comments next session and kind of finalize and wrap up this document, and which will give a bit of time to John, Michael and I, maybe to keep on working on finalizing the draft of the business process diagram that we could review also with you guys to seek some feedback and comments, so we can also wrap this up and be on time for the deadline of March. Sounds
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great plan. I will absolutely follow up with that, set up the space where everybody can access and work on the same document.
Yeah.
And, you know, that I can see how that those strategic, tactical, and operate can be interpreted in different ways. We started one, we'll just have to reconcile. We'll find a way to deal with this, just to, make sure that the two things are consistent. I think that'll be great. Let me just stop the recording. My computer is also acting up today. So I will send out an email to you, Ellen, with the new with a space. And